Okay guys, how's it going? This is the first time I've ever done a YouTube video for a PowerPoint slide, so if it's a little rough, just bear with me. I'm going to try to get through it. The YouTube channel this video is posted on is going to be my school YouTube channel, so feel free to drop a like on the video, and when you do, make sure you also subscribe and click the notification bell for future episodes being released. You guys know that usually we do PowerPoint slides. For geography, we did them about 3 days a week. For government, we were usually going to be doing them about 4 or 5 days a week because the tests are not as often. They're not every week like they were with geography. I'm going to probably break down each week's PowerPoints into little episodes. So for example, like this says day 1, that'll be the first, day. If we were in class, this would have been the PowerPoint we would have been gone through on the first day of the week, Monday or whatever. So day 2 would be Tuesday, day 3 would be Wednesday. So this week is going to be legislative branch. Normally we do not hit the branches until about halfway through government, but because of the current situation, it's easier for me to do the branches first because I have more online stuff for the branches. I have better resources, better web quests and things like that for the branches than I do for the earlier part. So some of the stuff you might not understand quite yet, but I'll fill you in on that stuff. I'll point it out and go, okay, we haven't covered this yet, but we will come back to it later on. And so whenever we end up back in school, we will hit the the beginnings of government, different kinds of government, how the U.S. was created, Declaration of Independence, all that stuff. I don't know how long we're going to be out. They haven't told me anything. I just work there. If I hear anything, I'll either post it on Google Classroom or I'll mention it in one of the videos. So just try to keep up. Go ahead and start, taking some notes on paper. If you don't have your notebook because it's school, just do your own paper and just keep track of it. The government slides, for the most part, are a lot shorter than the geography slides. And there's more slides, but there's less information on the slides. You'll see what I mean once we get started on this. If we go too quickly through a slide, I'll tell you right before I'm about to change to the next one. Just click pause on the video and, copy down what you need to copy down and then just click play again and, we'll move on. So, let's do it. So we're starting off with the legislative branch. That's the first branch of government that we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about executive branch and judicial branch, but those will be over the next couple weeks. Executive branch normally takes 2 weeks, but if we do come back to school, that's when we'll do the second part where we actually talk about presidents, like some important presidents. We'll get back to that later on, but let's go ahead and do legislative branch this week. And okay. So the legislative branch is broken into 2 houses. The first house is the Senate. You can see right here, lovely drawing. The Senate has only 100 members, so there's 2 for each state. There's 50 states, which equals 100 members. Each senator serves for 6 years. So if you get elected to the Senate, you are going to be in office for at least 6 years before you have to run for re-election. That's a lot longer than the House. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm sure you guys already know the president is only in office for 4 years. He can be elected twice for a total of about 8 years. The Senate, you can be elected for 6-year terms, and there is no term limit. So you can be elected as many times as you can win. So we do have senators that have been in office since the 1990s. I don't think there's any from the 1980s anymore. But, there's some senators that have been in there longer than I've been alive because they keep getting reelected. And that is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. The qualifications for being a senator are pretty simple. You just have to be 30 years old, and you have to have been a U.S. citizen for 9 years. There's also a third qualification. You have to have lived in the state that you're running in for, I think it's 8 or 9 years as well. So you have to have been a U.S. citizen for 9 years, and you also have to have lived in the state that you're trying to win for a certain number of years too. You can't just move from Georgia to Florida and go, okay, I'm going to run for Senate down here because I lost in Georgia. No, you can't do that. You have to be there long enough to show that, yes, you're living there and it is your state now. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. If you need to pause it, go ahead and pause it. So, House of Representatives. So the Senate is a little bit more popular than the House because the Senate, it's really rare. You know, senators, you don't see them very often. I've never met a senator for the U.S. government. House of Representatives, there's a lot of them. There's 435 members in the House, so there's quite a few of them. I have met one of our former House of Representatives members before. They're kind of around. Depending on where you live, they are actually like in your area. You actually meet them. Because there's so many of them, they're not very rare. It means it's not as cool a job. If you meet a senator, that's really cool. If you meet a member of the House, it's just kind of like, oh, another one. Great. They only serve 2-year terms. So every 2 years, they have to run for re-election. That is very quick. The House is one of those things where you kind of just get in there, you get comfortable with your job, and then all of a sudden you have to run for re-election again. It's also a little bit easier to get into the House. You only have to be 25 years old. You only have to have been a citizen for 7 years. And then also you have to have lived in your state for a couple of years as well. So it's a lot easier to become a House of Representatives member or what we call a congressman or a congresswoman. You only have to be 25 and been a citizen for 7 years. So it's a lot younger. It's a lot easier to get in. And again, there's more of them. So it's more common. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, so if you need to pause it, go ahead. So, how are they elected? This is the process. We are in the middle of this right now. The election cycle is going on as we speak. Elections are handled by the states. So each state, this is something covered in the Constitution. We'll talk about this either later on in the semester or when we come back to actual class. But states have some jobs and the U.S. government has some jobs because they are separate. The states are separate from the U.S. government. The states are in charge of handling elections for office. So each state will start off with a primary. This is where we are right now in the process. We are in the primary area. The primary is where people from the same party are going to be running against each other. So for example, if we look over here at this side, this picture on the left, of my little arrow there, this is an example of a primary. So this was the primary for Alabama's 6th Congressional District. This was a few years ago. But all of these guys that you see here are all Republicans because it's the Republican primary, you can see here. All of them are Republicans running for the same seat in Congress. They're all running against each other. Now, what usually happens in a primary is somebody wins. But to win, you have to have 51% of the vote. If you do not have 51%, they will have to do a runoff. A runoff is where they will usually take the top two, so whoever got the top two number of votes, and they will make them run against each other again. And the people will have to go and they will have to vote. So, for example, if we have over in this one, this guy right here won, and then we had this guy right here that won, they're going to come over here and do a runoff election. Whichever one of these two wins, because this time one of them will win, one of them will get 51% of the vote no matter what, that person, in this case I think this guy, is going to come down here and be in the general election. The general election is where we have the different parties going against each other. So we will have the Republican guy going against the Democratic or whoever the other candidate is, because it could be a different party. It could be the Independent Party or the Green Party or whoever. That's where they're going to be fighting against other parties. Whoever wins the general election is going to be the person that goes on to be elected to Congress. Now again, this is a long process. This process can last anywhere from a couple months to, honestly, you guys know the presidential election cycle. It's been going on for a couple of years now. People have been saying they're running. People have been saying they're not running. I mean, it depends on the race, but they can last quite a while. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide. So if you need to pause it, go ahead and pause it. Oh, yeah, I forgot I had animation. That's nice. Okay, so Senate. Back to the Senate for a minute. Is that right? There are only 2 senators per state. So each state has equal representation. This matters. We'll talk about why this matters when we get to the beginnings of government. But each state, no matter how big, like California, or how small, like, I don't know, little Delaware over here, each state has 2 senators. So they are all equal in the Senate. It doesn't matter if California has 60 million people and Delaware only has 1 million. They're still going to only get 2 senators. That makes it equal. Now, senators used to be appointed by the state. The governor and the state government would vote on who they wanted to be the senator because the senators were supposed to represent the state, not the people in the state, if that makes sense. That changed with the 17th Amendment. They changed it so that people could vote for them. This is still a pretty hot topic. A lot of people are still kind of upset about this. Some people want to go back to where the states pick the senator, and some people want to stay where the people pick them. Will it happen? Who knows? We'll find out. But the entire state votes for the same candidate. So, if you are running for Senate, you have to keep the whole state happy because all the people in the state are going to vote for you no matter what. So it doesn't matter if you live in Atlanta and you're running for office, people in Savannah or Columbus or Valdosta, they're going to be voting for you as well. So you have to keep the whole state happy to win. It is called a continuous body, as you can see here. Only 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. So senators, if you remember from the first slide, they are in office for 6 years. And it's broken up so that not everybody is being re-elected at the same time. There are 3 classes, Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3. So Class 1 might be the people that just got elected. They've got 6 years left on their timer. Class 2 might be the people that were elected 2 years ago. So that means they only have 4 years left. And Class 3 might be the people who were elected, 4 years ago. So they only have 2 years left. It is broken up by that so that we don't have to re-elect everybody at the exact same time, because that would be a lot. Sometimes, in Georgia, it has been a couple of years since we had a Senate election because both the senators we had were in Class 1 and Class 2. That means we had senators that had a couple years left on their timers before they were up for re-election. This year, we actually have 2 senators up for re-election. The first one is because his time has run out. That's David Perdue. He's running for re-election. The second one we're having is because one of our senators decided to retire because he got sick. So they have to have an election to fill his empty seat. So that person is going to run and fill his empty seat, and then in 2 years, whoever wins will have to run for re-election again because that will be when his time originally ran out. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, so go ahead and pause it if you need to. Now, the House of Representatives. So we talked about the Senate with how many there are. There's only 50, 2 for each state. Each state is equal. This is where states are not equal. The House of Representatives is based on the number of people in your state's population. So, smaller states have less, bigger states have more. Georgia currently has 14 House of Representatives members. The total is 435. See, my art is not very good. So Georgia has 14 of these 435. You only have to keep your own people happy if you're in the House. So the districts are a lot smaller. It's not for the whole state. It is just for a small district. So, for example, most of us live in the 6th district of Georgia. So our person, who is currently a lady named Lucy McBath, she only has to keep the people in her district happy. So her district consists of Brookhaven, Chamblee, Dunwoody, Doraville, and I think maybe Sandy Springs. That's the only area she needs to focus on keeping the people happy. If she can keep them happy, then she will get reelected. If she cannot, then she will lose and somebody else will take her place. Now, this does change. Every 10 years, there is a census. So we are in 2020 right now. There's a lot of, you've probably seen the YouTube commercials. Hell, you might have seen one on this video of the census. The census is very important for the U.S. It happens every 10 years. This is where they count up all the people living in the U.S. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this is really important, so make sure you tell your parents to fill it out because it is really important. One of the main things that we get with the census is money. If there's a lot of people living in an area, that area is going to get more money from the government to do more things, like build a new hospital, build better roads, all that stuff, because there's more people there. For example, if Brookhaven, so most of us live in Brookhaven, Brookhaven is going to get more money because it has more people than McWhirterville, my town, which only has one person. They're not going to give McWhirterville $1 million for a brand new hospital if there's only one person. But they will give it to Brookhaven because Brookhaven has more people and needs more stuff. That's one of the reasons the census is so important. The other reason is this thing called reapportionment. Reapportionment is where we get new numbers for our House of Representatives. It is balanced to equal the population. So if Georgia's population goes up, my up arrow, we're going to get more people. We might have 15 now instead of 14, or we might have 16 because our population has gone up. If our population goes down, so for example, New York's population has gone down a little bit, they're going to lose people. They're going to go down maybe 1 or 2 seats, and those seats are going to move somewhere like, Georgia, because we get a new one if we have enough people. We do not add seats anymore to the House. We could if they voted to, but they just don't want to because we don't have enough room in the building, basically. We could add more seats, but we don't. So instead, we just balance them out. So this 435 will stay the same, but each state's seats will change. Some of them will stay the same, some of them will go up, and some of them will go down based on their population. That is the other reason the census is so important, because the census is what changes how much representation we get in the government, how much of a say-so we get. It changes how much money we get from the government to do things. I mean, it really affects us a lot. It also gives us information like how many people live in an area so we know how to prepare for things like, for example, a crazy virus outbreak that shuts the school down. It might be good to know how many people are in the area that might get affected by that. So, there you go. Good example. We're going to go ahead and switch over to the next slide. So if you need to pause it, go ahead and pause it. So, issues. And we should be close to being done, guys. I think we might have, I think we've got 2 more, but they're just pictures we're going to talk about for a second. There's not any writing. I think this is the last one for day 1. So, issues. Redistricting. Redistricting is an issue. It comes along with that reapportionment thing that we just talked about on the last slide. When the numbers change, so when representatives change, they have to create new districts or get rid of old districts. Sorry, I'm not very good at highlighting on this thing. Redistricting is where they redraw the lines for these districts. Now, redistricting is tough. It is hard because you have to be very careful about how you do it to make it fair. What happens is this thing called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is actually illegal. But, just like a lot of things in life, you only get in trouble if you get caught. Gerrymandering happens all the time. Every party does it. The Democrats do it. The Republicans do it. Everybody does it, but they only get in trouble if they get caught. And it's hard to prove that it's happening. You have to go through the court. You have to sue people. The court has to look at it and go, okay, obviously this is a little messed up. I'll explain more when we get to the pictures and talk about it in a second, but it's really stinky how they do it. Gerrymandering is where they're going to redraw the district lines to help themselves. So, for example, we're going to look at the best example I have is North Carolina, which is these two pictures down here at the bottom. But North Carolina has an issue with gerrymandering a lot. They're the best example. So in this map right here, the blue is the Democrats, the D. The R is the Republicans. In 2010, as you can see on this map right here, the Democrats were in control of the state government. Whoever controls the state government gets to do the gerrymandering, the redistricting. So in 2010, they redrew the map to help themselves. As you can see, this district over here on the left, or on the right, I'm sorry, look at all these skinny areas right here that kind of just branch off out into the middle of nowhere and back again, like that. What kind of district is that? How do you even know where that is? Like, look at how weird that looks right there. Like, what is that? It's really stupid because you can't, how do you even know where that is? That's like the size of a house or a road right there. That's so small. And you can see it just comes down here into the middle of nowhere. The reason they do this is because these pockets down here, these little skinny parts, are probably where a lot of Republicans live. They are grouping them in with this big chunk of Democrats over here because there's more Democrats in this big chunk than there are Republicans. Because of that, the Democrats are going to win that seat and take away Republican voters from other districts over here to help Democrats there maybe win. Now, if we switch over here to this map, this one over here on the right, left, I'm getting backwards. In 2012, the Republicans took over the state. So even though the Democrats had gerrymandered to try to help themselves, they ended up still losing the state anyway. In 2012, the Republicans took over and then they gerrymandered the state. You can see here how the state map changed between the two of them. The Republican gerrymandering is just as bad as the Democratic one, but it's a little different. So instead of changing it around, they basically just redid some of the lines. As you can see, this district over here had this weird little shape like that. Now this district comes all the way out to here. So they added in this section right here that had probably a lot of Republican voters. They took it from another district that stayed Republican anyway and added it to this one to make it more Republican. Which one of these maps is more fair? I can't really tell you. I don't know. Because honestly, gerrymandering, all the sides do it. It's almost impossible to draw a redistricting map to make everybody happy. It's not going to happen because each side wants to win. The Democrats want to win and the Republicans want to win. So they're going to draw the map to try to help themselves do that. That makes it almost impossible to draw a map that keeps everybody happy because if you did that, nobody would win. The only way to keep everybody happy would be if everybody won, and that's not possible. The closest thing you can get to that is a tie. And if you have a tie, you still can't do anything because you have to have a winning vote to get stuff done. So this is where gerrymandering becomes a big problem. We're going to go ahead and switch over to the next slide, which should just be a couple pictures. So if you need to pause it to get this stuff down, go ahead. Okay, so this is the Georgia map. This is the current, as of 2016 anyway, this was the map of Georgia. This was the Republican gerrymander. Georgia's gerrymandering is not as bad as a state like North Carolina or a state like Maryland. We're going to look at those maps in a second. Georgia's is actually not as bad. The only one that's a little bit different, honestly, the way that they've drawn it, if you look at this one over here, this is a hypothetical map. That means it's not real. It's just an idea. Even if you did the hypothetical map, the Republicans would still have a winning number of votes in Georgia because Georgia is a fairly Republican state. More people most of the people that live in Georgia are Republicans, and so therefore most of the state is going to vote Republican, which means they're going to have more seats. The only difference, as you can see, if you switch to this one over here, is that the Republicans will only have 8 seats versus 10. The Democrats would have 6 instead of 4. We currently live over here in the 6th district. This is where we are right here. Right now, that is actually blue. That district was won by a Democrat named Sally McBath, I think, or something like that, a couple of years ago. She's up for re-election this year. Is she going to win re-election? I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. If I had to guess, I would say probably not, but we'll just have to wait and see. She's up against a lady named Karen Handel. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But for the most part, the state has stayed the same. These other districts are still Republican for the most part. So instead of having 10, the Republicans have 9. But again, this is gerrymandering. So you can see if you compare the maps, these districts would change shapes. They would change positions too. You can see the 7th district is over here on the right. If you switched over to this one, the 7th district would be way down there on the bottom now. It has just completely shifted around the side of Atlanta because that's the Atlanta area. That's why these districts are so small. But, honestly, a lot of these districts wouldn't change too much. You can see 14 would just move up, 9 would move down, 8 would still be pretty big in the middle. It'd actually get bigger. 1 would stay kind of the same. 8 would take a little bit of 1. So, honestly, it wouldn't change too much. Just around this area here is where we would see most of the changes. So this is the one for Maryland. As you can see, this is gerrymandering right here. You can see how crazy this line is all the way around, trying to group these people together. Look at that little teeny tiny little spot right there that connects these two together. This is a Democratic gerrymandering, so this is where the Democrats have redrawn the lines to help them win the elections by pulling in different groups of people into this area. You can see how crazy this line is. If the line looks like this, you can just go ahead and assume it was gerrymandered. If it looks like that, that's just not how a normal district is supposed to look. That's just not how it's supposed to go. If we go back, I don't know if it'll let me go back. Oh, I can't go back. Never mind. But if we went back to the Georgia map, you could see some of the districts are just big blocks. That's how a district should look. This is not how a district should look. That's just crazy. That it? Nope. Okay. That's just a bigger version of the North Carolina one. So you can see again the crazy differences between these two, how they were districted together and how they were pulled apart by different groups. Again, you can see some of these districts are normal. I know it's kind of hard to see because of the background, but the lines are kind of like right here. Let me try to draw on them. Let's see. So that's kind of the line for that district right there. That's a pretty good district. You can see it's a little bit different because they redid it to help each group. So the Democrats redid it to help themselves here. The Republicans did it to help themselves down on the bottom. But you can see it's a pretty big chunk. It's not like this one right here where it's just squiggly line, squiggly line, squiggly line, and just all over the place. So again, that is a gerrymandered district. That's kind of how you can tell. If it's crazy like that, it's probably gerrymandered. I would say it's a 95% chance it's gerrymandered. If it's like this big block right here, that looks a little bit more normal. Even though it has like this weird, let me switch over to the highlighter here. Laser pointer. Wish I could change the color. Whatever. Can I? Nope, guess not. Nope, turn it back on. There we go. If you're looking at this right here, this little gap, that is normal. You could say, okay, maybe that's just a river. The river, so for example, where my family's farm is in Alabama, the congressional district follows the river. So it does look kind of squiggly, kind of like this, but only on one side. The rest of it's pretty big like this. The other side's squiggly because it follows the river. That's the border of the district. So that's why I said 95% of the time that means it's gerrymandered. Sometimes that could just mean it's along the coast or it follows a river or whatever. But either way, that is still, this big chunk over here, that is a reasonable district. I could say that is most likely not gerrymandered because it is a good chunk. It's not crazy shape. and, so it works out. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. Day 2, I will upload as a separate video. I tried to get through this as quickly as possible. Of course, you can always fast forward, trying to keep it to 30 minutes or less. Again, make sure you hit the like or subscribe button, or both, for the YouTube video. I'm going to link the video into the Google Classroom page so that you should be able to, I don't know if you'll be able to watch it from the page or if you'll just have to open YouTube. But either way, just make sure you're trying to watch these videos if you can. Do what you can. You can do it from your phone. Just watch it on your phone. Just write it down. Write down some notes. Just do the best you can. If you have any questions, make sure you email me at my email. See if I can type that up here real quick. And nope. I'll probably put it on the next one just in case. Check your school email. I send out an email trying to get everybody signed in. If you know somebody in the class, if you have their number or their Snapchat or their Instagram or their Twitter or whatever, contact them and let them know the class is online. Tell them to check their school email. I'm trying to send out messages on everything that I can, but of course there's always going to be students that don't check anything, so please let them know to get into the class if you know them. Even if you think they're in the class, just check with them and make sure. Please tell them to get in, because guys, they are going to make us pass and fail you if you're participating or not participating. So if people do not get into the class, they are probably going to fail if we stay in here for a long time. Again, I don't know how long we're going to be in here doing it like this. I'll let you guys know if I hear anything, but honestly, I haven't heard anything yet. Just keep your ears out. Keep in touch. If you need anything, make sure you email me through the school email. You can contact me on Google Classroom, I think. I've got a Google Voice phone number where you can text to it, but I have to look it up and see what it is. I've never memorized it. So I will try to put that out there where you can do a Google Voice text, where you can just text the number like a normal cell phone, and it should come in. But it's only through my computer, so again, I will be checking in the evenings usually. So if you don't hear from me during the day, that's fine. I will check almost every evening. I'll keep an eye on it during the week. And if I see something, I will respond to it. So day 2's video will be posted at some point. And then I will get back to you guys. Have a good one. Don't do anything stupid.